This is TWiT.
Brazil, just in the nick of time, has ordered Apple to suspend iPhone sales if they ain't going to put a charger in the box and fine them a pittance, $2.38 million. But you won't be able to sell iPhones in Brazil anymore if you
I
don't.
have a prediction here.
What'll
it's like
happen?
that. It's like the thing where France had your iPhone box was inside another box with a pair of headphones because that was the rule.
Yeah.
Well, guess what, Brazil? You're getting the box with
A box within a box. There's a box in that box.
There'll be a charging brick in there.
Yep.
Whee!
It has not stopped iPhone sales. iPhone U.S. market share hits all-time high, overtaking Android. I'm sorry, Andy.
Yep.
And it also dominates global premium sales, obviously.
I am not an investor. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Global Apple, the premium segment has a wholesale price of over $400. Apple has 57% of the world market. In the ultra premium slice of $1,000 plus devices, Apple owns 78% of the segment. I don't know who has the rest. Who has the other 22?
Google. It's Google or Samsung, probably.
Samsung. Yeah, the Fold is. Yeah, that must be it. Yeah, there you go.
They got a lot of nice high-end phones too. Right?
It just goes to show Apple's policy has always been that we don't care about market share. We care about making the most money we can off of every customer we have and retaining those customers for as long as we can retain them. So it's good.
Yeah, and as Andy knows, the corollary to that is there are points below which Apple doesn't feel like they want to go because they don't think the product is going to match their brand and is going to be good enough. And we can argue about where that line should be drawn, but you put them both together and that's the answer, which is it's there's a level below which Apple will never go. They will never be the low price leader. I'm amazed that after, when I started in this business in the 90s, like market share was all anybody ever talked about. And I kind of like that we kind of never even talk about market share anymore. It's kind of refreshing not to.
And
do
if anything, like the European Union might be different, but in the United States, an antitrust is really complicated when you have less than 70 or 80% of the market. It's really an uphill battle. And so going for a higher market with the same revenue at a smaller market share is to Apple's advantage. Like if we'll probably see them keep leaning towards the those higher numbers because having the smaller the market share is, if they can maintain revenue, the better it is for them.
I mean, in the Wintel era, it was seen as like a zero-sum game where it was like the kiss of death if you weren't the market share winner. That was in the Wintel era, like it was always like Windows and Intel, and they control everything, and everything else the Mac is doomed. Forget about it. And in our era today, it is this multi-platform era where like PCs and Windows are doing their thing. Apple's doing their thing with the Mac. There's iPhone, there's Android, there's iPad, there's Chromebooks, and like, there are interesting business dynamics going on in various markets and all of that, but I don't feel anywhere that there's somebody saying like that there's the specter of doom for a platform is hovering over your market share numbers. It just feels like we've left that era behind, and I for one do not miss it. I don't miss that idea that if your numbers are down this quarter, it means your whole platform is doomed.
I do think that one thing that Apple is getting better and better at, and they're uniquely set up for this, is the lock-in across all the platforms. So if you're an Apple user, it just becomes more and more cumbersome to use anything else. Like, because there's so many things that so easily integrate your computer with your Apple TV, with your phone. Like, everything just talks to each other. And because Apple's building all the chips and all the software and all the development, it gets so tight where, it used to be, I used to have in this studio, I used to have a couple PCs and I had a Linux box and I had some other stuff in there, and it was just too much trouble. Like I was just like, okay, enough of this. And so I still have them. I still use them for a couple of the development things that we do, but I don't keep them in my studio anymore because it's just too much. Like it was so much of my time was being spent trying to get these computers to talk to each other. With the Mac, it's just like, I just drag this over here and then I move over here and I move my mouse over there. And I think the lock-in is getting pretty intense.
Yeah, it is pretty disappointing. I think it shows something that Apple, a trick that Apple has never demonstrated any proficiency at. Meaning that they're really good when they get to control as much of the playing field as possible. When you introduce variables that almost every other developer of every other hardware device has to deal with, they nope out of that completely. And so and that's fine. I mean, if you're happy with the products that Apple is creating, if you are, I think there are going to be a lot of people who are very thrilled to have an iPhone that's matched to an Apple Watch, that's matched to AirPods. However, I think that sometimes, particularly in Apple fandom, this becomes a, oh, well, see, why can't Samsung doesn't do anything nearly as nice as this, and Google doesn't make a phone as nice, nearly as nice as that. Yeah, but when you buy other phones, other devices, you can use whatever you want with it. Apple, they really do make it difficult to not to reach outside of that platform in any way, shape, or form. Even two-factor authentication, which is I'm glad that Apple has an authentication system that says, hey, if you're trying to log into a brand new machine that didn't exist before with your Apple ID, we are going to authenticate you through another Apple device. That's fine. That's a lot better than a SIM card swap, being able to steal your identity and stuff like that. But nonetheless, it means that as someone who uses an Android phone, that means that I have to go to the other room, reach into my bag, get out my iPad for another Apple device that was going to receive this message. Whereas if they simply said, oh, by the way, we're using a standard authentication scheme, we will have apps available for pretty much every mobile platform that's going to be you might want to authenticate with. See, that's the sort of stuff that makes. If I'm scoring Apple like as an Olympic judge, that's why they don't get 10s across the board. That's why there's the point deductions always whenever I think about them that way.
I think that the funny thing is, for me, when that happens, like suddenly all these computers light up with this code, you know, like here's the code, and so it's on like every monitor has like the code that I need to get into whatever I'm getting into. And the thing is that I think that Apple users, the people who are buying all these, that's the lifestyle that Apple is catering to the lifestyle that we prefer, which is, I just want it to be like, I don't think Apple users buy Apple because they're geeky. I think they buy them because they're doing things and they just don't want they don't want all the other stuff to get in the way. They don't want to spend a bunch of time trying to figure out how this interfaces with that. They just want it to all work, you know. And I think that, and I'm sure that there's a small percentage that don't want that, but I bet you it's, you know, Apple tends to what does 90% of the people want to do 90% of the time, and that is, you know, we just want it to work, you know. And I've had times in my life where I've had many different platforms, but I've kind of passed that now.
Well, that's an excellent point. But the other thing is like my Sony wireless earbuds, they actually interact with more devices a lot more easily than any Apple earbuds that I've ever tried. A lot of other services, they also just plain work. It's not as though there are times when Apple is really giving me an advantage by having all this tight integration between each other. But there are times where you're just doing a very, very average job, and I'm giving up something without, it feels like, getting anything in return. And so, like I said, it's going to be on a case by case basis, a person by person basis. They're parts of my my coverage of Apple and coverage of companies, which is very, very practical, very, very standard. Which is, hey, how well does this phone work? Is it a good value based on the other one? Hey, they've got new feature. Is it snake oil, or does it actually work? But there is, because, you know, people like Jason and I, we've been like looking at this company for decades, for like most of our lives, and so you do get to think of it as a character and try to judge them as, are they doing everything they could possibly be doing? I mean, are they demonstrating excellence, and they're challenging themselves in every way they possibly can, and they're challenging themselves in ways that would pay off for the user. And there are some times where they would much rather just stand there with a bat on their shoulder and just watch the pitch go by rather than swing at it, because it's just not worth it for them.
Well, I think
that's not a great thing.
And they're playing a different game a little bit, and I think that's sometimes the frustration with Apple, is that they're playing a different game than some of their competitors, and there are places they choose not to go. And like, instead of making headphones for a whole bunch of different devices, they make headphones for Apple devices, and they do work with other devices, but that's not the point of them, and they don't care. The Apple Watch is fundamentally an iPhone accessory. That's the device it works with, and that's all it works with. I will point out, though, I want to throw it out there, since this is where we started, that if you do the math, there have to be more people who own iPhones and have Windows PCs than have Macs. Just throwing it out there.
That's right. Yeah.
Let's do the math.
Which is weird.
So it is weird, but like, we talk about the Apple ecosystem play, and I think that's why Apple's ecosystem, they feel like there's always more market share for them to gather and more customers for them to grab, because they know that there's so many people who use Windows PCs and iPhones, and that's an opportunity for them on the Mac side. But, you know, it is, and here's another thing, which is, I wonder if we're not giving enough, and I'm not saying we, meaning me, because I don't want to do it. Please don't make me run Windows 11. But like the average iPhone experience is somebody with Windows 11 or 10 or, or 8.
The reason for that, though,
iPhone.
Jason, is because their business bought them the computer and they bought the iPhone. And this has been kind of seen everywhere. Business drives Windows. And by the way, if you've ever had to use Windows 11, you have my deepest sympathy. This is in fact, don't tell anybody, but I don't understand why anybody uses Windows anymore. It's gotten worse, not better. It's really crappy. And there are other good choices out there, including Mac OS. I'm just stunned. But it's because businesses, they keep buying them. We buy them. Our editors, I feel sorry for you, John. I don't know why you're using Windows 11. Oh, yeah, because we bought it for you. Okay. But do you use an iPhone?
No.
Oh, never mind.
Android.
Well, then.
You don't know any better. That's all. That's fine.